Agatha All Along is out in full on Disney+, 9 episodes, around 40 minutes each. It's the latest entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Stars Catherine Hahn, Joe Locke, Sashir Zamata, Ali Ann, Deborah Jo Rupp, Patti LuPone and Aubrey Plaza. It's a spin-off sequel to both WandaVision and a little bit less so to Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, and focuses on the character of Agatha Harkness, the evil witch introduced in WandaVision. If you remember the end of that show, Wanda left Agatha powerless and mind-wiped to believe she's just a regular human being, living in the small town of Westview. We find Agatha in episode 1 continuing to live in that delusion. She's a detective investigating a mysterious body found in the woods, in a pretty brilliant pastiche of Mare of Easttown, I have to say. And then slowly but surely the illusion breaks because Wanda is dead, so her spell can no longer be sustained. Agatha gets out, and in order to get her powers back, she gets together a coven of 4 other somewhat flawed, somewhat incompetent witches, plus a mysterious teenager who is very much into witchcraft. And together they embark on what is called the Witch's Road, a magical series of deadly trials which, if passed successfully, reward the person with their heart's desire. So we're back to the magical side of the MCU, definitely more of a witchy, slightly horror, slightly comedic vibe than the usual superhero stuff. The show has received fairly positive reviews, and especially on the Marvel subreddit, people can't shut up about how it's the best Marvel TV show ever. I disagree. I think it's average at best, and while there are some interesting elements in here and some things to really enjoy, in the end it fails to achieve excellence and falls into many of the same traps that the other Disney Plus shows did. I will start with the things that I liked. I think that the premise of the Witch's Road and the various trials, which are really an excuse to switch locations, styles, costumes each episode, that is all very cool. I liked the first episode, which I already mentioned, as well as episode 7, which has a time jump component that is executed fairly well. I liked some of the cast and their performances. Catherine Hahn is great at chewing the scenery. I really loved Patti LuPone in this. Aubrey Plaza is strangely sexy as always and charismatic, even with not the best material. I think the banter between the witches is alright, and I liked some of the humor. I loved the theme song. I think it's an absolute banger, and it was cool to hear multiple different versions of it across the show. And I also appreciate that Marvel is slowly learning to operate on smaller budgets. Apparently this had around $40 million budget for the whole season, which, compared to, for instance, Secret Invasion, which was $200 million for 6 episodes, it's kind of amazing that Agatha All Along looks and feels so much better on such a smaller budget. Now, for the faults. First and foremost, I disliked the pacing of the show. I felt that it never really lets itself breathe, lets the audience spend some time with these characters, lets itself really play with these cool concepts. It's always in a rush to get to the next plot point, the next reveal, the next cliffhanger, the next big thing. A couple of examples. The first episode starts with this amazing Mare of Easttown vibe. Already talked about it, and we together with Agatha are trying to sort of slowly figure out what is happening. It was a fantastically atmospheric thing and brought to memory the early episodes of WandaVision as well, but it very quickly just skips the slow figuring out part and just tells us what's going on, and then we move with the plot. We have to keep moving. I was like, no, wait, I want to spend more time with this conceit here. Why couldn't this go on for like 2 full episodes? And then Agatha has to gather the coven, so she has to find 4 other witches to embark on the road to open the doors. So you think to yourself, okay, cool, this is gonna be 1 episode per witch where we get to get introduced to these new characters and we get to properly know them and learn about them. Nope, Agatha gathers all of them in like 20 minutes and off we go. They all live in the same small town apparently, and it just, it makes the show feel so tiny when it comes to the scope. And normally I would say that's a good thing. I'm tired of all these world-ending threats in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but this is sort of on the other side of that spectrum. It feels weird when the first main challenge of the show is you have to find 4 other witches, and they all live in the same small town. So it feels contrived. And there really is, there's no reason to rush things this way. I would understand if there were like some heavy CGI scenes involved in making these things go longer, but all you had to do was just put those witches in a room with Agatha one at a time and write good dialogue around it. Let it breathe. Anyway, then we get to the road, and each trial is focused on the skills of a different witch. Okay, well then this must be a good idea to expand upon them, or to do what they kind of do with the first trial, which is split the team up, have them pair up in 2s and 3s, and use those scenes as a breathing room for the characters to get to know each other and for us to get to know them. Classic television thing. Nope, we get like a minute max and off we go to the next scene. Even in my favorite episode, which is number 7, the whole time jumping device just begs to be used as flashbacks to explain Lilia's backstory. Nope, it's used exclusively to push the immediate plot forward. The whole thing feels like it's sprinting towards the end, which inevitably turns into a CGI battle in the penultimate episode. There's no reason to do it this way. It doesn't have to be a fast, relentless Marvel-type hero versus villain confrontation that we rush towards without any character development or emotional stakes before that. And speaking of the battle, I fucking absolutely hate that the magic as presented here is 90% just colorful CGI beams a la Harry Potter, but they go from they come from the hands instead of the wands. I mean, Doctor Strange even showed that you can do so much interesting stuff with magic. Get inventive. Don't just do the boring shit always. I mentioned the performances previously. Now for the bad side of those. I thought Jolok is disappointing as the teen. He overacts in every scene, feels very stagey and unconvincing. And like I said with Aubrey Plaza, as good as she is, and as much as I have a soft spot for her, I think her material gets progressively less interesting as the show goes on. I also find it amusing how in a show about Agatha, we still don't really learn the whole backstory of how her mother and Coven turned on her and how she even got her powers and why all these things happened. We just get some additional info on what happened afterwards. And some of it is interesting, like the final episode story with Nick. But on the whole, it just becomes kind of repetitive. Also, I feel that there are plot holes, and maybe some of them have to do with Marvel wanting to continue the story elsewhere, but still, as of now, I feel there are elements that make me scratch my head. Like, I don't get Agatha's plan. After the final episode reveal, minor spoiler. So it turns out that in the second episode, she knew she needed witches to siphon power from, but she knowingly recruited witches who didn't have any power, and even one civilian, one woman who wasn't a witch. Doesn't make any sense. Secondly, the way she ends up in the in the final episode and how her relationship with Teen is resolved was incredibly clunky. I don't know what her plan was. I don't know what her motivation was. Why Teen wants nothing to do with her and then 1 minute later agrees to team up again. It is contrived and poorly written. And as a sort of a final point, and this ties into the argument about how magic is shown, but goes beyond that, I saw some people praising the show for how different it is than the other Marvel stuff. I would say it's not different enough. It promised it would be totally wild, and in the end, it isn't all that inventive. And seeing Aubrey Plaza especially immediately made me think of Legion, which she was also in, and which is possibly my favorite Marvel TV show of all time. That was different. That was inventive. That was crazy. So I already know from Legion that you can do original stuff that is unique and memorable and fun, yet still within the superhero universe. And by contrast, Agatha All Along just feels incredibly flat. It's a shame. As I said, there are things to appreciate, and I really wanted the show to do its own thing and do it in a fun way, but I can't help but feel disappointed by the end product, which is average at best.